U.S. universities have always been a magnet for global talent, and that has benefited the globe, but it's also benefited the United States. If you look at the history of the United States, if you look at our Fortune 500 companies, 40% or so, 30 to 40% of the Fortune 500 companies were founded by immigrants, U.S. immigrants, or the children of immigrants. Those companies right now produce around $19 trillion in revenue and millions of jobs that benefit everybody in this country. If you look at the United States, of course, has won more Nobel Prizes than any country in the world, but about 30 or so percent of those Nobel Prizes have been won by U.S. immigrants. And in fact, if U.S. immigrants were a separate country, they would be second to the United States as the country that's won the most Nobel Prizes. This last year, the United States won a number of Nobel Prizes. The only one not won by a U.S. immigrant was the one Bob Dylan won. Everybody else was a U.S. immigrant. So we benefit greatly from this ability of our universities to attract global talent. Right now, of course, we're in an environment where nationally we are putting out unwelcome signs to international students, and our universities are really having to redouble their efforts. Many of them are working with in public-private partnerships with corporations who work around the globe to help bring more students to our country because they need the help. Countries like Canada, Mexico, and others are redoubling their efforts to recruit global talent because they see a competitive opening. And their message to students from Vietnam, India, China, Brazil, around the world is very simple in these other countries. You are welcome here and you are safe. And it's working. So we need to really think about how we redouble our efforts because it is a benefit not just to the international students who come, not just to the institutions. Obviously, they're a revenue source. I know many institutions that use international student revenue to reallocate those funds toward programs to serve underserved domestic students who need additional support services, but also for our domestic students. If you're at a university where the majority of the students are from, let's say, the state in which the university resides, and it's a fairly homogeneous campus, and those students then go from inside the state to another place inside the state and largely are educated with fellow people from that state. How do you argue you're preparing those college graduates for a global economy? So there's enormous benefit if you can recruit a reasonable number of international students. Most places look for 10 to 15 to 20%. That can then be, and then successfully integrate them into the campus culture. If you don't do that, you can get segregation where all the international students sit over here and all the domestic students over here, and you lose the benefits. But if they're working together on projects and on teams, if as a student who grew up, let's say in our state here, who grew up in Peoria, Illinois, if I'm working with students from Vietnam and Brazil and France on projects throughout my career, I'm learning about cultural differences in a way that isn't just in a book. I'm learning how you adapt and work with global teams, which of course is what you're going to have to do for the most part when you get out. 83%, according to recent data, of students who move into the current workforce will be working with virtual teams. And a lot of those virtual teams are virtual because you're bringing together people from geographically dispersed areas, and that means international. So we really need at the university level to maintain our commitment to create a learning environment on our campus that attracts global talent for the benefit of the country, for the benefit of our domestic students, and certainly for the benefit of our institutions. And it is also not untrue to say that even if those students end up going back to their home countries after acquiring, hopefully, a very positive experience in the United States and a good education, there are more than a few examples of where those students become connectors, global connectors, for the kinds of partnerships that we want to create with our global partners economically, politically, and socially.